"I'll never marry you or accept this child out of wedlock," the millionaire yelled. But 9 months later, one hospital door broke his heart and brought him to his knees. The words returned to Russell Roberts again and again as he stood outside Delivery Room 3 at Mercy General Hospital. They didn't sound powerful now. They sounded small, like a stranger had spoken through him. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and quiet urgency. Nurses moved quickly, shoes whispering against polished floors, while families waited with folded hands and hopeful eyes. Russell remained near the door, shoulders stiff, hands locked together as though he were bracing for impact. A newborn's cry carried down the corridor, sharp, fragile, real. He swallowed, staring at the small window in the door. Behind it, blurred figures moved around Nicole Stroman, the woman he had once believed would never fit into the future he designed so carefully. 9 months ago he had stood in a penthouse wrapped in glass and certainty. Now he stood here with nothing but doubt. "Sir," a nurse asked gently, "are you waiting for someone?" His voice came out quieter than he expected. "Yes." He looked at his reflection in the glass, tailored suit, flawless posture, yet none of it felt useful here. The man who controlled boardrooms and billion-dollar negotiations suddenly felt unprepared for a single door. Hours earlier, Russell had left Roberts' tower before sunrise. His office had been silent except for the faint hum of city traffic below. Awards lined the walls, each one proof that discipline worked, that emotions were distractions best kept out of business and life. He paused near his desk before leaving, noticing the empty space where a silver bracelet once rested. Nicole had placed it there the night she walked away. "You once said success meant protecting the people you loved," she had told him softly. He had answered with logic instead of feeling, reputation, stability, timing. The elevator ride down had felt longer than usual. Outside, the city moved with energy. Investors calling, assistants sending updates, markets opening. Everything ran on schedule, except him. His driver asked if they were heading to a meeting. "No," Russell said, eyes fixed ahead. "To Mercy General." Even now, sitting in the hospital hallway, fragments of that perfect world clung to him. The sharp crease in his sleeve, the polished shoes, the steady breathing he used to hide uncertainty. Yet beneath it all was an unfamiliar weight. He had everything he once believed mattered. Still, something inside him felt unfinished. A couple across the hall laughed softly while looking at a phone full of baby photos. Their joy felt effortless, unscripted. Russell watched them for a moment, then looked away. When had he started measuring life only by control? Was strength always about saying no? Could success mean anything if it left no room for someone else's heartbeat? He thought of Nicole standing in his office months earlier, hands resting gently over her stomach. "I'm pregnant, Russell." The memory tightened his chest. He remembered the calm tone he used, rehearsed, almost distant, as if the situation were another business challenge. He told himself he had been protecting their future, protecting stability, but standing here now, he wondered whether he had simply been protecting himself from fear. A doctor passed by, offering a brief nod. Russell returned it automatically, then shifted closer to the door. He could hear voices inside, steady and focused. Every sound pulled him deeper into questions he had avoided for months. Time had moved forward whether he wanted it to or not. He saw flashes of those months like brief scenes playing behind his eyes. Nicole laughing in a roadside diner during a rare weekend away. Sunlight catching her hair as she teased him for checking emails too often. Her quiet strength when she believed in something. The day she left his office, placing the bracelet on his desk with a calm he didn't expect. "I won't beg you to be a father," she had said, "but one day, you might wish you chose love instead of pride." He told himself she was wrong, told himself she would understand eventually. Headlines celebrated his achievements. Investors praised his focus. Yet nights inside the penthouse stretched longer than before. Sometimes he found himself staring at an old photo he never admitted keeping. He imagined what her life might look like now, where she lived, who supported her, whether she still thought of him at all. Before we go further, subscribe to Mr. Cooper Stories if you believe powerful stories should feel real, honest, and unforgettable. The hospital phone call that morning shattered that distance. "Mr. Roberts, there's been a complication during labor." For a moment he had said nothing. Then, without hesitation, he grabbed his coat. Now, standing outside the door, he realized those 9 months hadn't erased anything. They'd only made the silence louder. The newborn's cry sounded again, closer this time. Russell stepped forward, hand hovering inches from the handle. He remembered the certainty in his voice when he told Nicole he would never accept a child born outside his plans. The certainty felt fragile now. Inside the room, movement slowed. A nurse approached him, her expression kind. "You can go in," she said. He hesitated. For years, every decision in his life came from calculation, risk versus reward, gain versus loss. This moment felt different. There was no strategy here, no negotiation, just a choice. He exhaled slowly and pushed the door open. Nicole lay against the pillows, tired but calm, a small bundle wrapped in soft blankets resting in her arms. She looked up, surprise flickering across her face before settling into quiet understanding. "I didn't think you'd come," she said gently. "I didn't think I would either," he admitted. She shifted slightly, offering him a closer look at the child. Tiny fingers curled and uncurled against the blanket. "Do you want to meet your son?" The word son landed deeper than anything he had ever heard. Russell stepped closer, unsure of what to say. He reached out carefully, and the baby's hand wrapped instinctively around his thumb, warm, alive, trusting. Something inside him softened in a way no success ever had. For the first time in months, he didn't feel like a man protecting an image. He felt like someone standing at the beginning of a story he didn't understand yet. Nicole watched him quietly. "I don't expect perfection," she said. "Just honesty." He nodded, voice low. "I don't know what comes next." "We'll figure it out," she replied. The world outside the room continued moving, phones ringing, footsteps echoing, but inside, time felt slower, gentler. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of the story he thought he had closed 9 months ago. If this opening pulled you in, stay with us, because the road that brought Russell to this moment didn't begin here. It started with a choice, a promise, and a single sentence that changed everything. Long before the hospital door, Russell Roberts lived by a rule he never questioned. If every detail stayed under control, nothing could hurt him. Morning inside Roberts' tower began before the city fully woke. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Vancouver washed in pale gray light, the street still quiet below. Russell stood near his desk, reviewing market updates, tie perfectly aligned, expression unreadable. "Your 9 o'clock moved to 8:30, his assistant Maya said through the intercom. "They insisted. They always insist," he replied calmly. "Move my breakfast call instead." "Yes, Mr. Roberts." Every adjustment felt effortless to him. Numbers shifting, meetings rearranged, outcomes anticipated before anyone else noticed the pattern. Control wasn't just a habit, it was the structure he trusted most. He walked past framed awards without looking at them. Success never surprised him anymore. It simply confirmed that discipline worked. Outside the office, employees straightened when he passed. Some admired him, some feared him, but all respected the certainty he carried. In a world that moved unpredictably, Russell appeared immovable. And yet, when the elevator doors closed behind him later that morning, the reflection staring back felt distant. For a moment he loosened his grip on the tablet in his hand, as though unsure what to do without another task waiting. The doors opened again before the feeling could settle. Lunch meetings filled most afternoons, but Russell preferred the rare days when he could step away from crowded restaurants. He walked into a small cafe near the tower, nodding politely to the barista who already knew his order. "Black coffee?" she asked. He gave a brief smile. "You remember, you come here enough," she replied. He took a seat by the window, watching people move through their day without schedules dictating every step. A young father crouched beside a stroller, making faces that drew laughter from a baby bundled in a blanket. Russell looked away quickly, focusing instead on the numbers scrolling across his phone. Nicole used to sit across from him at this table, sketchbook open, paint on her fingertips despite his teasing about the mess. "You should take one afternoon off," she had told him once, nudging his coffee toward him. "Just one. I don't stop moving," he answered lightly. "That's not strength," she said. "That's fear wearing a nice suit." He remembered how he laughed then, brushing off the comment as playful exaggeration. Now the empty chair across from him felt heavier than expected. A notification interrupted his thoughts. Another contract finalized, another milestone achieved. He closed the message without replying. For the first time in a long while, winning didn't feel like enough to fill the quiet space inside him. Nicole Stroman entered Russell's life in a way he never intended. They met at a charity gala months earlier, where he stood near the back of the room analyzing speeches instead of listening to them. She was helping children display their artwork along the walls, laughing easily as she adjusted crooked frames. "You look like you're calculating escape routes," she said when she noticed him watching. "Observation," he corrected, "not escape." She tilted her head, studying him with curiosity instead of intimidation. Observation is just a polite way of saying you're not fully present. Most people treated him carefully, choosing words that aligned with his reputation. Nicole spoke as if titles meant nothing. He found it refreshing. They talked longer than he planned, about art, about ambition, about the way people chase success without asking what it cost them. When she invited him to visit the community center where she taught, he surprised himself by agreeing. The center smelled of paint and laughter, Children ran between tables holding up drawings with proud smiles. Nicole moved among them with patience and energy, her presence softening every room she entered. "You don't have to fix everything," she told him that day when he offered to fund new supplies immediately. "Sometimes people just need someone to believe in them." He didn't fully understand her perspective, but he admired it. Being around her felt different from any boardroom or negotiation, less predictable, more human. Over time, dinners turned into long conversations, and long conversations turned into something he never defined aloud. She never pushed him for labels. She simply stayed, steady, kind, present, and for a while, Russell allowed himself to believe that balance was possible. Despite the ease Nicole brought into his life, there were moments when Russell pulled back without explanation. One evening, they stood on his balcony overlooking the city lights. She leaned against the railing, pointing out constellations barely visible above the skyline. "You don't talk much about your past," she said gently. "There isn't much worth discussing," he replied. She didn't push, but her silence invited honesty. After a long pause, he added, "Growing up, nothing stayed stable for long. I learned early that control keeps things from falling apart." Nicole nodded slowly. "Control can protect you, but it can also keep people at a distance." "I'm not good at unpredictability," he admitted. She smiled softly. "Life rarely asks permission." He changed the subject then, shifting the conversation back to work. She noticed, but she didn't force him to continue. That was one of the reasons he trusted her. She respected his pace even when she disagreed with his walls. Still, as their relationship deepened, he felt tension rising between the life he built and the emotional space she represented. He told himself he could manage both. He believed that until the day she walked into his office with a truth he hadn't planned for. The afternoon Nicole arrived at Roberts Tower felt ordinary at first. Rain traced quiet lines down the glass walls while assistants moved through the halls with purpose. Russell finished a call with investors, his voice steady and confident. "Send the revised proposal by tonight," he instructed Maya before ending the meeting. When he looked up, Nicole stood near the doorway, hands clasped gently together. There was a softness in her expression he didn't recognize, calm but heavy. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said. "You never interrupt," he replied, standing to greet her. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, glancing at the city beyond the windows as though searching for the right words. "We need to talk." The tone alone shifted something inside him. He gestured toward the seating area, trying to maintain his usual composure. As she sat, her hand moved instinctively toward her stomach, a small gesture he noticed without understanding. The room felt quieter than usual, the hum of the building fading into the background. "You've been busy lately," she began carefully. "It's been a demanding quarter," he said, offering a reassuring smile. "But I always make time for you." She inhaled slowly. "This isn't something I wanted to say over the phone." A flicker of concern crossed his face. "Nicole, what is it?" Her eyes met his, steady and vulnerable at once. "I'm pregnant, Russell." The words hung between them, gentle but powerful, the exact moment when the world he controlled began to shift in ways he never expected. Nicole stepped out of the elevator. She paused for a moment in the quiet hallway, smoothing a crease from her sleeve even though it didn't need fixing. People passed her with polite nods, unaware of the storm of thoughts she carried inside. Maya looked up from her desk. "Hi, Nicole. He's finishing a call, but you can go in." "Thank you," Nicole said, offering a gentle smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Inside the office, Russell stood near the window, voice steady as he finalized a negotiation. Numbers, timelines, projections, everything sounded precise and controlled. When he ended the call and turned toward her, his expression softened immediately. "I didn't expect you today," he said, crossing the room. "Is everything okay?" She nodded, though her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. "Can we talk for a few minutes?" "Of course." He gestured toward the seating area, unaware of how significant this moment would become. Nicole sat slowly, drawing a quiet breath. She had rehearsed the words 100 times, yet they felt heavier now that she was here. Russell poured water into 2 glasses, offering one to her before sitting across from her. "You look serious," he said gently. "What's going on?" She met his gaze, calm but vulnerable. "I needed to tell you something in person." For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Russell leaned back slightly, giving her space. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." Nicole smiled faintly at that, not because she believed it, but because she wanted to. "You've been working a lot lately," she began, voice careful. "That quarter-end deal took longer than expected," he admitted. "I'm trying to balance things better." "I know you are," she said. "That's why I didn't want to rush this conversation." His attention sharpened. "You're worrying me." She exhaled slowly, looking down at her hands. The city reflected across the table's polished surface, fractured into shifting light. "I didn't want to tell you through a message," she said. "Some things deserve more respect than that." Russell nodded, posture straightening instinctively, preparing himself for bad news, a family issue perhaps, or a health scare unrelated to him. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Nicole hesitated, then lifted her eyes to meet his. The calm in her expression made the moment feel strangely peaceful despite the tension growing between them. "I'm pregnant, Russell." The sentence arrived without drama, almost soft enough to disappear if he blinked too quickly. He didn't respond immediately. His gaze drifted past her toward the skyline, as though the city might offer clarity. The silence stretched long enough that Nicole wondered if he had heard her at all. "How long?" he asked finally. "A few weeks," she replied. "I wanted to be sure before telling you." His fingers tightened around the glass he held. "And, you're certain?" She nodded gently. Yes, for a brief moment, something unguarded crossed his face, surprise mixed with uncertainty, but it faded quickly behind the calm mask he wore so well. Nicole watched him carefully, waiting not for a perfect reaction but for honesty. The room felt quieter than usual, every sound softened by the weight of the moment. Russell stood and walked toward the window, needing distance to think. His reflection stared back at him, composed, steady, unshakable, yet his thoughts moved faster than his expression allowed. "This changes things," he said slowly. "It does," Nicole agreed, "but not in a bad way." He exhaled through his nose, organizing his thoughts the way he would before a major decision. "My reputation affects more than just me. Investors expect stability. Sudden news like this creates complications." Nicole rose from her seat, closing some of the distance between them. "I didn't come here to discuss public image. I'm not dismissing what this means," he replied, though his tone sounded analytical rather than emotional. "I'm trying to consider the consequences. The consequence is that we're going to have a child," she said softly. His shoulders stiffened. "We need to think carefully before moving forward." Her gaze searched his face. "You're talking like this is a crisis. I'm talking like it's something that needs structure," he said almost defensively. The gap between their perspectives widened with every sentence. Nicole's voice softened, but there was quiet strength beneath it. "I'm not asking you to abandon your life. I'm asking you to see this as something real." Russell turned fully toward her, conflict flickering in his eyes. "I'll take care of the situation," he said. She frowned slightly. "What situation?" "My reputation matters," he answered, tone sharpening as fear crept into his reasoning. "Scandal isn't part of the future I've built." "This isn't a scandal," she whispered. "It's our child." He hesitated, then spoke the sentence that would echo long after this day ended. "I'll never marry you," he said quietly, "and I won't accept a child out of wedlock." The words fell into the room like heavy stones. Nicole blinked slowly, hurt passing across her expression before she steadied herself. "You once told me success meant protecting the people you loved," she said. Silence filled the space between them, thick, unspoken, irreversible. Nicole walked toward his desk without rushing. She removed the silver bracelet from her wrist, turning it once between her fingers as if memorizing its weight. "I won't beg you to be a father," she said gently. "But one day you might wish you chose love instead of pride." She placed the bracelet beside his documents, a small gesture that felt louder than any argument. Russell watched her, unsure whether to stop her or remain still. Words formed in his mind but refused to reach his lips. Nicole paused at the door. "I hope you find peace with whatever decision you believe is right," she added softly. Then she left. The office felt larger after she was gone. Russell stared at the bracelet, the rain outside blurring the skyline into distant light. For the first time since building his empire, certainty felt fragile. He reached toward the bracelet, then pulled his hand back. The silence that followed didn't sound like victory. It sounded like the beginning of a distance he didn't yet understand. Weeks passed, and Russell Roberts did what he had always done. He moved forward. "You never miss," one investor said during a celebratory dinner. Russell gave a polite nod. "Preparation makes things predictable." The table laughed, glasses lifted in quiet approval. Yet when the evening ended and the elevator carried him back to the penthouse, the silence waiting inside felt heavier than usual. He loosened his tie, glancing at the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the windows. Normally the view grounded him, proof that everything he built stood firm. That night it felt distant. His phone buzzed with messages, but none were from Nicole. He told himself that distance was necessary, that she deserved space and he deserved focus. Still, when he walked past his desk, the silver bracelet caught his eye again. He had moved it into a drawer, but he hadn't thrown it away. You made the right choice, he muttered to the empty room. The words sounded convincing until they echoed back without warmth. Across the city, Nicole Stroman adjusted the small window above her new apartment, a modest space above a flower shop that smelled faintly of roses and fresh soil. Her friend Elena set down a box near the couch. It's not fancy, she said gently, but it's peaceful. Nicole smiled. Peace is enough right now. She ran her hand along the wall where sunlight slipped through thin curtains. The room was smaller than anything she had shared with Russell, but it felt grounded, real in a way she needed. At the community center, children gathered around her as she prepared art supplies. Paint splattered across old tables while laughter filled the air. Miss Nicole, look, one boy said, holding up a bright drawing of a tiny house with a big sun above it. It's beautiful, she told him warmly. What made you choose those colors? They feel happy, he replied. She nodded, placing a hand over her stomach without thinking. Life felt uncertain, but not hopeless. She spoke gently to the baby when she walked home each evening. You're already teaching me patience, she whispered one night, smiling softly. Friends sometimes asked if she heard from Russell. He's not cruel, she told them calmly. He's just afraid of losing control. She never spoke with bitterness, only quiet acceptance. For Russell, time moved forward on paper but felt stalled in memory. One afternoon, he found himself sitting in the same cafe where he and Nicole used to meet. The barista greeted him with the usual warmth. You're regular? Yes, he replied, though his voice carried less certainty than before. He chose a seat by the window, watching people walk by in pairs, friends, couples, parents guiding children across the street. His phone buzzed repeatedly, but he ignored it, staring instead at the empty chair across from him. A memory surfaced uninvited, Nicole laughing over a spilled drink, teasing him for checking emails even during lunch. You don't have to carry everything alone, she had said then. He closed his eyes briefly, pushing the thought away. When his coffee arrived, he realized he had ordered 2 cups out of habit. He slid one aside, untouched, and told himself it didn't matter. But when he stood to leave, he hesitated, as though waiting for someone who wasn't coming. As months passed, Nicole's routine settled into something steady. She attended prenatal appointments alone, listening carefully to every detail the doctor shared. The first time she heard the baby's heartbeat, she laughed softly through tears. That's strong, the nurse said. Nicole nodded. He already sounds stubborn. At night, she painted small animals on the nursery wall, soft colors, gentle shapes, creating a space that felt welcoming rather than perfect. Elena visited often, bringing groceries and encouragement. You're doing this with more grace than anyone I know, she said one evening. Nicole shrugged lightly. Grace comes from acceptance. I can't control other people's choices, only my own. She never spoke harshly about Russell. Instead, she held on to the belief that people could grow in ways they didn't expect. Sometimes she imagined a knock at the door. It never came. Still, she continued forward, step by step, building a life defined by quiet resilience rather than regret. Back at Robert's tower, Russell's assistant noticed subtle changes. You've been working later than usual, Maya said one evening as she handed him a folder. Expansion season, he replied without looking up. She hesitated. If you ever need to reschedule anything personal, I can adjust your calendar. He paused briefly, then shook his head. There's nothing personal to reschedule. The statement sounded firm, but it lingered in the room longer than expected. Later that night, he opened a drawer and stared at the bracelet again. His thumb traced its edge before he set it back down carefully. He considered calling Nicole more than once. Each time, he stopped himself, convinced that silence meant strength. Yet the penthouse felt colder without laughter echoing through it. Meals arrived untouched. Even victories felt quieter than before. One evening, he found an old photo tucked between files. Nicole at a roadside diner, sunlight catching her hair as she laughed at something he barely remembered saying. He turned the photo face down, then turned it back again. 9 months moved faster than either of them realized. Nicole's apartment filled with soft baby clothes and gentle anticipation. She stood by the window one gray morning, breathing slowly through early contractions while Elena called the hospital. You're doing great, Elena reassured her. Just keep breathing. Nicole nodded, calm despite the pain. He's almost here. Across the city, Russell reviewed quarterly reports when his phone rang unexpectedly. The number was unfamiliar. Mr. Roberts? A nurse's voice asked. This is Mercy General Hospital. You're listed as an emergency contact. His chest tightened. What happened? There's been a complication during labor, she explained gently. You may want to come. For a fraction of a second, he said nothing. The office around him faded into silence, numbers, contracts, schedules losing their importance. I'm on my way, he replied. He grabbed his coat without finishing the meeting, leaving stunned colleagues behind. As the elevator descended, memories rushed back. Nicole's calm eyes, the bracelet on his desk, the sentence he couldn't take back. The city blurred past as his car moved through traffic faster than usual. For the first time in months, certainty slipped from his grasp. And somewhere between Roberts Tower and Mercy General, Russell Roberts realized that silence had never truly protected him. It had only delayed the moment when he would have to face what he left behind. Russell rarely allowed interruptions during executive meetings, yet the vibration of his phone against the table pulled his attention away from the discussion. He glanced at the unknown number, ready to silence it, until something in his chest tightened without explanation. "Excuse me," he said, stepping away from the conference table. "Mr. Roberts?" a calm voice asked when he answered. "This is Mercy General Hospital. You're listed as an emergency contact for Nicole Stroman." The room around him faded into a distant hum. "What happened?" he asked, voice quieter than usual. "There's been a complication during labor," the nurse explained gently. "She's stable, but the doctor suggested you come if you're able." For a brief moment, Russell closed his eyes. 9 months of silence collapsed into a single second. "I'll be there," he said. He returned to the conference room only long enough to gather his coat. "We'll continue this tomorrow," he told the executives. No explanation, no hesitation. Maya followed him toward the elevator. "Is everything all right?" "It's personal," he answered, adjusting his cufflinks with unsteady fingers. She nodded, understanding more than he said aloud. "Take all the time you need." The elevator door slid shut, sealing him into a quiet space where he couldn't hide behind schedules or numbers. He stared at his reflection, composed on the outside, unsettled within. The city that once felt like a chessboard of opportunities now looked unfamiliar as he stepped into the waiting car. "Mercy General Hospital," he instructed the driver. The engine started, and for the first time in months, Russell felt like he was moving towards something he couldn't predict. Rain dotted the windshield as traffic flowed around them. Russell watched the streets pass by, memories surfacing whether he wanted them or not. Nicole laughing over coffee. Nicole painting tiny animals on scrap paper while explaining her ideas for a children's class. Nicole standing in his office, calm but heartbroken, placing the bracelet on his desk. He tightened his grip on the seat beside him. "Sir?" the driver asked quietly. "Do you want me to take the faster route through downtown?" "Yes," Russell replied, then added after a pause, "Thank you." Every red light felt longer than usual. He checked his phone repeatedly, half expecting another call with new information. Nothing came. The silence inside the car grew heavier, filled with thoughts he had avoided for months. "I'll never accept a child out of wedlock." The memory of his own words pressed against him, sharper now than when he first spoke them. Russell had faced high-stakes negotiations, public scrutiny, and financial risks without hesitation. Yet as the hospital grew closer, uncertainty crept in, unfamiliar and impossible to calculate. What if she didn't want him there? What if he had arrived too late? He imagined Nicole facing labor without him, surrounded by strangers instead of someone she once trusted. A quiet frustration rose inside him, not at her, but at himself. He had convinced himself that distance was strength. Now, distance felt like regret. The car slowed near the hospital entrance. Nurses and visitors moved through the glass doors, each carrying their own stories. Russell stepped out, adjusting his jacket automatically, though the gesture felt meaningless compared to the moment waiting inside. Mercy General Hospital felt different from any place he usually entered. No one greeted him as an executive or asked about business deals. He was simply another man walking toward uncertainty. At the front desk, a nurse looked up with a warm expression. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for Nicole Stroman," he said. "I received a call." She checked her screen and nodded. "Delivery room 3. You can take the hallway to your left." "Thank you." His footsteps echoed softly as he walked down the corridor. Families sat along the walls, whispering encouragement to one another. Some smiled nervously, others held hands in silence. Russell felt out of place, a man who spent years controlling outcomes now waiting for something entirely beyond his influence. As he reached the end of the hallway, he stopped. Delivery room 3 stood ahead, its small window glowing with soft light. He didn't reach for the handle right away. Instead, he listened. Voices murmured inside. Calm instructions, quiet reassurances. A faint cry rose and faded, fragile yet powerful enough to send a shiver through him. A nurse approached gently. "Are you here for Nicole?" He nodded. "Are you family?" she asked. The question lingered longer than he expected. "Yes," he said finally, the word carrying more meaning than he understood. She offered a small smile. "You can wait here. The doctor will come speak with you shortly." Russell stood alone outside the door, hand hovering inches from the handle. The hallway felt quieter than the world he left behind, stripped of titles, stripped of certainty. Every choice he made over the past 9 months led him to this exact spot. He was thinking about Nicole and the child he once refused to imagine. Russell remained outside delivery room 3 longer than he expected. Inside Robert's tower, people waited for him. Here, he waited for news he couldn't influence. The hallway clock ticked steadily, each second stretching farther than the last. A young couple sat a few chairs away, whispering encouragement to one another. The man squeezed his partner's hand every time she winced. Russell watched them briefly, unsure why the simple gesture unsettled him. A doctor stepped out of a nearby room, scanning a chart before noticing him. "You're here for Nicole Stroman?" "Yes," Russell replied quickly. "She's strong," the doctor said reassuringly. "Labor has been difficult, but she's doing well." Relief moved through him before he could hide it. "And the baby? We'll know more soon," the doctor answered gently. When the doctor walked away, Russell leaned against the wall, letting out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. For years he believed strength meant standing alone. Yet in this hallway, surrounded by strangers sharing similar hopes, that belief felt less certain. A nurse approached with a clipboard and a warm smile. "Are you Russell Roberts?" He nodded. She handed him a disposable gown and pointed toward a bench. "If you'd like to go inside when the doctor calls you, you'll need to put this on." He hesitated, glancing at the thin fabric. It felt symbolic, a quiet reminder that his usual armor didn't belong here. "Are you family?" she asked softly, echoing the question he had heard earlier. The word lingered in his chest. "Yes," he said again, more firmly this time. She nodded approvingly and moved on, leaving him alone with the realization that the label no longer felt distant. Family. The idea unsettled him and steadied him at the same time. As he waited, fragments of memory returned uninvited. Nicole standing in his office, calm despite the weight of her news. Her voice when she said, "One day, you might wish you chose love instead of pride." He replayed his own response, measured, cold, certain. Back then, he believed he was protecting a future built on structure. Standing here now, that certainty felt thinner, like glass that could crack with one touch. He closed his eyes briefly. What would he say to her if she asked why he stayed away? What explanation could justify 9 months of silence? If you're enjoying stories that show growth instead of perfection, hit subscribe and walk this journey with us. The hallway grew quieter, lights dimming slightly as evening settled outside. For the first time in years, Russell felt unsure of the version of himself he had carried for so long. Then it happened. A newborn's cry rose from inside the room, small but powerful, cutting through every thought in his mind. Russell's head lifted instantly. The sound felt unfamiliar yet deeply personal, as if it belonged to him even before he stepped inside. The cry faded into softer noises, voices offering congratulations, gentle laughter mixed with relief. His chest tightened. He imagined Nicole holding the baby, exhausted but calm, the way she always carried strength quietly. The nurse returned, her expression bright. "You can go in now," she said. Russell stared at the door, hand trembling slightly as he reached toward it. The memory of his harsh words returned at the same moment. "I'll never accept this child." Standing here, those words felt heavier than anything he had ever said. He pushed the door open slowly. The room was warm, filled with soft light. Machines hummed quietly while a nurse adjusted blankets near the bed. Nicole lay against the pillows, tired but peaceful, her hair damp against her cheek. When she saw him, surprise crossed her face, followed by a calm acceptance that made his chest ache. "I didn't think you'd come," she said softly. "I didn't think I would either," he admitted. She shifted slightly, revealing the small bundle resting in her arms. The baby stirred, tiny fingers curling against the blanket. "Do you want to meet your son?" she asked. The word son changed the way the room felt. Russell stepped closer, unsure where to look first. At Nicole's eyes, at the child, at the life he once refused to imagine. Nicole guided the baby gently toward him. "Support his head," she whispered, voice patient rather than demanding. Russell nodded, hands careful and unfamiliar as he accepted the tiny weight. The baby's fingers wrapped instinctively around his thumb, warm and trusting. Everything inside him shifted. For years he believed vulnerability made people weak. Holding his son, he felt something entirely different, a quiet strength that didn't come from control. "I was wrong," he murmured, almost to himself. Nicole watched him, her expression soft but thoughtful. "I'm not asking you to have all the answers," she said. "Just be honest about what you feel now." He swallowed, eyes lingering on the child. "I don't know how to be a father." A faint smile touched her lips. "Neither do I. We'll learn." Their hands brushed briefly over the blanket, a small, hopeful connection returning without pressure or expectation. Outside the room, the world continued moving. Inside, Russell Roberts felt the first real crack in the walls he had built around himself for years. and for the first time since Nicole walked out of his office, he wasn't thinking about what he might lose. He was thinking about what he might finally choose. Russell remained standing beside the hospital bed, unsure how long he had been holding the baby. Time felt softer here, measured not by schedules but by quiet breaths and the faint rustle of blankets. Nicole watched him carefully, giving him space to settle into the moment. "He's been calm since you picked him up," she said with a tired smile. Russell glanced down, almost surprised by the tiny face looking back at him. "He trusts easily. Babies don't think about the past," Nicole replied gently. "They just respond to warmth." He nodded, absorbing her words more deeply than he expected. "What's his name?" he asked after a moment. Nicole hesitated. "I wanted to wait. I thought maybe you'd want to be part of that decision." Emotion caught him off guard. He had prepared himself for distance, not inclusion. He studied the child's small features, searching for something that felt steady. "Orville," he said quietly. "Strength that grows quietly." Nicole's eyes softened. "Orville," she repeated, letting the name settle into the room like a promise. A nurse adjusted the blanket around the baby and offered Russell a few simple instructions. "Support his head a little higher," she said kindly. "You're doing fine." Russell shifted carefully, movements slow and deliberate. In boardrooms he moved with certainty. Here, every motion felt new. The baby let out a small sound, somewhere between a sigh and a yawn. Russell froze. "I think I did something wrong," he whispered. Nicole laughed softly, the first real laughter he had heard from her in months. "You didn't. He's just getting comfortable." The sound eased something tight in his chest. He lowered himself into the chair beside the bed, still holding Orville close. The weight of the child felt light physically but heavy with meaning. "This is different from anything I've ever done," he admitted. "It's different for me too," Nicole said. "We're both starting from zero." Silence settled between them, not tense, but thoughtful. Russell looked at Nicole, noticing the exhaustion behind her calm expression. "You did this alone," he said quietly. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she adjusted the pillow behind her shoulders. "I wasn't alone," she replied eventually. "I had friends. And I had him." The simplicity of her response carried more weight than accusation ever could. "I should have been here," he said. Nicole met his gaze gently. "You're here now." He nodded, unsure how to respond to her grace. For months he expected anger or resentment. Instead, she offered patience, leaving him to confront his own regrets without pressure. The baby shifted again, tiny fingers brushing against Russell's wrist. The contact felt grounding, pulling him fully into the present moment. As the nurse dimmed the lights slightly, the room softened into calm stillness. Russell leaned back, watching Orville sleep. The child's breathing was slow and steady, a rhythm that made the world outside feel distant. "I spent years building walls," he said quietly. "Every decision calculated, every risk controlled. Holding him, it's like those walls don't make sense anymore." Nicole listened without interrupting. "You don't have to lose yourself to become a father," she said gently. "You just have to make space for something new." He considered her words, realizing how often he equated vulnerability with weakness. Yet this moment felt stronger than any victory he had achieved. He reached out and adjusted the blanket instinctively, surprising himself with how natural the gesture felt. A doctor entered briefly to check on Nicole and the baby, offering a reassuring smile. "Everything looks good. You both did great." When the door closed again, Russell exhaled slowly. "I don't know how to fix the past," he said, voice low, "but I want to learn how to be present from here forward." Nicole studied him carefully, as if weighing the sincerity behind his words. "Learning takes time," she replied, "and consistency." "I understand," he said. The conversation wasn't dramatic or rushed. It felt grounded, two people acknowledging the complexity of where they stood without forcing resolution. He looked down at Orville again. "I want him to grow up knowing he was wanted," he added quietly. Nicole's expression softened, her eyes shining with quiet relief. Later, as sunlight began to filter through the hospital window, Nicole spoke softly. "Do you think he should carry your last name?" she asked. Russell paused, considering carefully. "Only if it feels right to you," he answered. "I want to earn my place in his life, not assume it." She smiled faintly at his choice of words. "Orville Robert Stroman," she said thoughtfully. "Both of us, equally present." He nodded, emotion rising unexpectedly. "I like that." The baby stirred again, tiny eyes fluttering open for a brief moment before closing once more. Russell felt a quiet certainty settle within him, not the rigid certainty he once relied on, but something gentler. Outside the room, nurses moved through the hallway, new families celebrating beginnings of their own. Inside, Russell remained seated beside Nicole and Orville, realizing that the life he once rejected had already begun to reshape him in ways no success ever had. And for the first time since that day in his office, he didn't feel the need to control what came next. He simply wanted to be part of it. Nicole's apartment above the flower shop felt brighter than usual when they returned from the hospital. Sunlight filtered through thin curtains, catching dust particles in the air like tiny sparks. Russell paused just inside the doorway, taking in the simplicity of the space: shelves filled with paint supplies, a small crib tucked near the window, soft animal drawings decorating the walls. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. Nicole smiled. "It's not perfect, but it feels safe." He carried Orville carefully, unsure where to stand or what to do next. The baby stirred, letting out a small cry that instantly pulled Russell's attention. "I think he needs something," he said, voice tinged with panic. Nicole laughed softly as she set down her bag. "He needs many things. We just figure out which one." That first evening felt clumsy and new. Russell moved cautiously around the apartment, bumping into a chair once and apologizing to it, as if it were part of the team. "Relax," Nicole teased gently. "He can't tell if you're nervous." "I can tell," Russell admitted, glancing down at the tiny face in his arms. The room filled with a quiet warmth that had nothing to do with luxury, only presence. The first late-night feeding arrived sooner than expected. Orville cried softly, the sound echoing through the apartment. Russell woke instantly, unsure whether to wait or act. Nicole stirred beside him. "Bottles on the counter," she murmured, half asleep. "You're in charge tonight, huh?" he whispered. The baby's tiny hand curled around his finger again, calming him more than he expected. Nicole watched from the doorway, leaning against the frame. "You're doing fine," she said. "I keep thinking I'll mess something up," he replied. "You will," she said with a soft laugh. "We both will. That's how learning works." The honesty of her words eased the pressure he placed on himself. For once, imperfection didn't feel like failure, just part of the process. Days turned into a rhythm neither of them planned, but both embraced. Russell assembled the crib with determined focus, reading instructions twice even when he usually trusted instinct. He triple-checked every screw, every latch. Nicole watched from the couch. "You're treating it like a business project. I'm treating it like something important," he replied. Russell stepped back, crossing his arms with quiet pride. "Stable. Safe." Nicole nodded. "Just like you like things." Later he found himself pacing the apartment while Orville cried, whispering soft reassurances even though he wasn't sure the baby understood. "It's okay," he murmured. "We're figuring this out together." When he finally finished, Orville lay peacefully inside, tiny chest rising and falling. One afternoon, Orville refused to nap despite every attempt to soothe him. Russell walked back and forth across the living room, adjusting his grip again and again. "I think he doesn't like me," he said quietly. Nicole laughed from the kitchen. "He cries at everything. You're not special." He moved carefully into the kitchen, preparing the bottle exactly the way she showed him earlier. When he returned, he sat in the rocking chair, holding Orville close. "That's reassuring," he replied dryly. She joined him, gently guiding his hands into a more comfortable position. "Try holding him closer to your shoulder." Orville settled almost immediately. Russell blinked in surprise. "How did you know that would work?" "Instinct," she said. "And trial and error," he chuckled softly, a sound that felt lighter than anything he had expressed in months. Moments like these turned anxiety into connection, the apartment filled with laughter more often, replacing the silence that once defined his evenings. As weeks passed, Russell began adjusting his work schedule without announcing it publicly. Meetings moved earlier in the day so he could return before sunset. Calls happened from the kitchen while he warmed bottles or rocked Orville to sleep. One evening, Maya called with an update. "You've been declining late-night events," she said carefully. "Should I keep blocking those times?" "Yes," he answered without hesitation. "Evenings are family time now." The word felt unfamiliar but right. After ending the call, he joined Nicole on the couch, watching Orville sleep between them. "I spent years believing success meant never slowing down," he admitted. "Now I don't want to miss a single moment." Nicole rested her head lightly against the cushion. "Growth isn't loud," she said. "It's steady." He nodded, understanding her words more deeply than ever. One night, after putting Orville down, Russell stepped onto the small balcony outside the apartment. The city lights stretched endlessly, but they no longer felt like a battlefield he needed to conquer. Nicole joined him, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "You're quieter these days," she observed. "I'm listening more," he replied. "To you, to him, to myself." She studied him with a soft smile. "That sounds like progress." He hesitated, then spoke honestly. Holding him, It made me realize how much I hid behind control. I thought love would make me weak. And now? She asked gently. He glanced through the window at the crib where Orville slept peacefully. Now I think it's the strongest thing I've ever chosen. Nicole didn't rush to respond. She simply reached for his hand, letting the silence settle into something calm and hopeful. For the first time in years, Russell felt grounded not by achievement, but by connection, a quiet strength that didn't need to prove itself. The change started quietly. A photo appeared online. Nothing scandalous, just Russell leaving a small grocery store with a bag of baby supplies in one hand and his phone in the other. It should have been forgettable, yet the image spread faster than anyone expected. Maya knocked gently on his office door the next morning. There's a bit of attention online, she said, placing a tablet on his desk. Russell glanced at the screen. Headlines speculated about a private side of the billionaire known for discipline and distance. They'll lose interest soon, he said calmly. Maybe, she replied, but investors are asking questions. He leaned back in his chair considering. Months earlier he would have shut down the conversation immediately. Now he felt less concerned about perception and more focused on honesty. Schedule a statement, he said. Nothing dramatic, just clarity. Maya nodded, though surprise flickered across her face. Later that afternoon, Russell met with his legal advisor and public relations team. This could affect negotiations, one advisor warned. You've built an image based on control and consistency. Personal details complicate that narrative. Another added, keeping things private might be the safest path. Russell listened quietly, fingers steepled together. What if I don't want to hide? He asked finally. The room grew still. You're not obligated to share anything, the advisor replied carefully, but visibility changes how people perceive leadership. He thought of Nicole rocking Orville to sleep, of the way the baby's fingers wrapped around his thumb without hesitation. My life isn't a secret, he said calmly. They're my family. The statement surprised even him with its certainty. A week later, a charity gala invited Russell as a keynote speaker. Cameras flashed the moment he arrived, reporters calling his name with familiar enthusiasm. Nicole hesitated near the entrance, unsure whether to step forward. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. I want to, he replied. Not for them, for us. He reached for her hand, a simple gesture that felt more meaningful than any speech he had delivered in years. The photographers noticed instantly, flashes bright against the evening sky. Mr. Roberts, is this your partner? One reporter asked. Russell didn't rush his answer. He glanced at Nicole, then at Orville resting peacefully in her arms. Yes, he said, they're my family. The crowd quieted, surprised by his openness. Nicole squeezed his hand gently, offering silent support. News outlets covered the event within hours. Some praised his authenticity, while others questioned how fatherhood might affect his focus. Maya entered his office the next morning with a careful smile. The response is mostly positive. Mostly, he asked. There will always be opinions, she said. But many people appreciate the honesty. Russell nodded. Honesty isn't a strategy, it's just where I am now. He checked his phone, finding messages from colleagues congratulating him not on a business deal, but on his courage. The shift felt unfamiliar, yet grounding. Later that day, Nicole sent him a photo of Orville giggling during tummy time. He's practicing smiling, she wrote. During a follow-up interview, a journalist asked him directly, do you worry that showing this side of your life makes you appear less focused on business? Russell considered the question carefully. I used to believe strength meant separating personal life from professional success, he answered. But I've learned that authenticity creates a stronger foundation than distance ever did. He paused briefly, becoming present for something that matters more than an image. The interviewer nodded, surprised by his candid tone. What changed your perspective? She asked. The answer spread quickly across social media, sparking conversations about leadership and vulnerability. I feel different, he admitted. Despite public attention, life at the apartment remained simple. If this moment touched you even a little, take a second to like the video. It helps more people discover stories that matter. If this moment touched you even a little, take a second to like the video. It helps more people discover stories that matter. Russell still struggled to fold tiny clothes correctly, still paced the floor when Orville refused to sleep, still learned patience one small moment at a time. One evening, as they walked through a nearby park, a stranger approached quietly. I saw your interview, she said. It meant a lot to hear someone successful talk about family like that. Russell nodded politely, unsure how to respond. After the woman walked away, Nicole glanced at him. You're inspiring people without trying. He shrugged lightly. I'm just being honest. They sat on a bench as Orville watched the trees sway above them. The world around them moved normally. Children laughing, couples talking, evening lights softening the sky. For Russell, the public attention no longer felt like pressure. It felt like a reminder that growth didn't require perfection, only the courage to be seen as you truly were. And for the first time he realized that the life he once feared revealing had become the most meaningful part of who he was. The apartment balcony overlooked a stretch of city lights that shimmered softly against the dark sky. Inside, Orville slept peacefully, his breathing steady through the baby monitor resting on the table. Nicole stepped outside with 2 cups of tea, handing one to Russell. "You've been quieter since the interview," she said gently. He leaned against the railing, watching traffic move below like distant ribbons of light. "I've been thinking," he admitted, "about everything I said and everything I didn't." She nodded, giving him space to continue. The air felt calm, not heavy like past conversations, but reflective, as if both of them understood the importance of speaking honestly without rushing toward conclusions. Russell inhaled slowly before speaking again. "I told you I'd never marry you," he said. "That sentence follows me more than anything else I've ever said." Nicole didn't look away. "I remember," she replied softly. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," he continued. "I thought I was protecting my future, but really, I was protecting myself from fear." She took a sip of tea, considering his words. "Fear makes people say things they don't fully understand at the time. I wish I could take it back," he said. Nicole shook her head gently. "You don't need to erase the past. You just need to grow beyond it." Her calm response surprised him. He expected anger or resentment, yet she met his honesty with patience. A quiet breeze moved across the balcony, carrying the faint scent of flowers from the shop below. "I don't want to rush us into anything," Russell said carefully. "Not because I'm unsure about you, but because I want whatever we build to be real." Nicole smiled faintly. "That's the first time you've sounded unsure in a good way." She rested her arms on the railing beside him. "We've both changed a lot in the past year," she said, "and change takes time to settle." "I'm not asking for perfection," he replied. "Just the chance to keep growing, at your pace." Her eyes softened at the sincerity in his voice. They stood quietly for a moment, listening to the city below. "You know," Nicole said, "when you first showed up at the hospital, I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't sure if you came out of obligation or something deeper." "And now?" he asked. "Now I see someone trying," she answered, "not someone pretending." The words carried more weight than praise. Russell realized that trust wasn't rebuilt through grand gestures. It grew through consistent presence, late-night feedings, and quiet conversations like this one. "I'm grateful you gave me another chance to be part of this," he said. She met his gaze. "You didn't ask for a second chance. You earned it by showing up." The baby monitor crackled softly as Orville shifted in his sleep. Nicole glanced toward the door, then back at Russell. "What do you see when you think about the future now?" she asked. He considered carefully. "I see less control," he admitted with a small smile, "but more meaning. I don't need everything planned anymore." "That sounds like a big change," she said. "It is," he replied, "and I don't expect us to have all the answers tonight. I just want to keep building, something honest with you." She nodded slowly. "Then let's grow into it, step by step." He reached for her hand, not as a promise of forever, but as a quiet agreement to continue forward together. They stood side by side, hands linked, watching the city lights stretch into the distance. "I used to think love would distract me from success," Russell said quietly. "Now I think it gives everything else meaning." Nicole leaned lightly against his shoulder. "Love doesn't erase ambition," she said. "It just reminds you why ambition matters." Inside, Orville let out a soft sound before settling again. The rhythm of their lives felt balanced, not perfect but genuine. Russell exhaled slowly, feeling a calm he hadn't known in years. The past still existed, but it no longer defined every decision. "Together," he said softly. Nicole nodded. Together, and for the first time since that day in Robert's Tower, the future didn't feel like something he needed to control. It felt like something he could grow into, patiently, honestly, one quiet moment at a time. The foundation started as a simple conversation at the kitchen table. Nicole sorted paintbrushes for her next class, while Russell reviewed notes on his tablet. Orville rested nearby, kicking his feet against a soft blanket. "I've been thinking about something," Russell said, glancing up. "During the past year I realized how many parents carry responsibility without support. I want to do something that actually helps." Nicole set down a brush. "What kind of help?" "Resources," he replied. "Childcare assistance, education programs, spaces where people don't feel alone." She smiled gently. "That sounds like something you've been learning firsthand." He nodded. "I used to think success meant building bigger companies. Now I think it's about building stronger communities." The idea felt natural, not like a public relations move, but a reflection of everything he had experienced since Orville's birth. Within weeks, Russell gathered a small team to bring the project to life. Instead of hosting meetings in glass-walled boardrooms, he visited community centers, listening more than speaking. One afternoon, he walked through a childcare program where parents shared stories about balancing work and family. Nicole joined him, offering insights from her experience teaching art. "These spaces matter," she told him quietly as they observed a group of children painting together. "They do," he agreed, "and I want them to exist long after headlines fade." Unlike his business ventures, this project moved at a gentler pace. Decisions were made thoughtfully, focusing on real impact rather than rapid expansion. For the first time, Russell felt proud not because of profit margins, but because of purpose. The foundation's opening event took place in a bright community hall filled with families, volunteers, and local leaders. Cameras flashed, but the atmosphere felt warmer than any corporate launch he had attended. Nicole stood near the back holding Orville, watching as Russell stepped onto the small stage. "I used to believe strength meant control," he began, voice calm but sincere. "But life has a way of reminding us that growth often begins when plans change." The audience listened closely, drawn not by status, but by honesty. "I've learned that compassion builds stronger futures than fear ever could," he continued. "This foundation exists to support parents who are doing their best, even when the path feels uncertain." He didn't mention personal details directly. Instead, his words carried quiet meaning for those who knew his journey. Nicole's eyes softened as she watched him, not as a distant executive, but as someone speaking from lived experience. After the speech, people approached him not with business proposals, but with gratitude. A young mother thanked him for creating a safe space where she could attend classes while her child played nearby. A father shared how the program helped him find balance between work and parenting. Russell listened carefully, shaking hands and offering genuine encouragement. "You've created something meaningful," Nicole said later, as they stepped outside for fresh air. "I didn't create it alone," he replied. "This came from everything we've learned together." She smiled, recognizing how far he had come from the man who once measured success only by numbers. That evening, Russell returned to the apartment carrying a framed photo from the event, a candid moment of families laughing together under colorful decorations. He placed it on the shelf beside Orville's drawings. "Is this your new version of success?" Nicole asked playfully. He nodded. "Legacy isn't just about what you leave behind. It's about what you help others build." Orville reached toward the frame, giggling softly. Russell knelt beside him, guiding his tiny hands away from the glass. "You're already part of this legacy," he whispered. Nicole watched the scene with quiet pride. Growth no longer felt like a distant goal. It was visible in everyday choices. Later that night, they sat together on the couch while Orville slept peacefully. "Do you ever miss the old pace of your life?" Nicole asked. Russell thought for a moment. "I miss the clarity of knowing exactly what tomorrow looked like," he admitted. "But I don't miss the emptiness." She leaned against him, listening. "This new path feels steady," he added. "Not perfect, but meaningful." Nicole nodded. "Meaning lasts longer than perfection." He reached for her hand, gratitude settling quietly between them. The foundation had given him a new direction, one shaped by empathy rather than control. And as he looked around the room, at Nicole, at Orville, at the life growing steadily around him, he realized that legacy wasn't something he would build alone. It was something they were creating together, one honest step at a time. Nearly a year after Orville's birth, Russell and Nicole walked through the doors of Mercy General Hospital together. The air felt familiar, soft footsteps echoing through bright corridors, quiet conversations drifting from waiting areas. Orville rested against Nicole's shoulder, curious eyes scanning everything around him. "It feels different being back here," Nicole said quietly. Russell nodded. "Last time I walked in unsure of who I was supposed to be. And now?" she asked gently. He glanced at Orville, who reached toward the lights overhead with a delighted laugh. "Now I know I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." They had come to donate new equipment through the foundation, a gesture that felt personal rather than symbolic. As they walked down the hallway, Russell slowed near delivery room 3, the door that once felt heavier than anything he had ever faced. He paused in front of the room, memories settling quietly around him. "This is where everything shifted," he said. Nicole stood beside him, her expression soft. For all of us, through the small window, a new family prepared for their own moment, voices gentle, anticipation filling the space. Russell remembered standing here months ago, unsure whether he belonged. The uncertainty felt distant now, replaced by gratitude. "I thought love would make me lose control," he admitted. "Instead, it gave me direction." Nicole reached for his hand. Growth doesn't erase who you were, she said. It builds on it. He nodded, letting the truth of her words settle. Later, they joined a small gathering in the hospital's community room, where staff thanked donors and volunteers. Nurses who remembered Orville's birth smiled warmly as they approached. "He's gotten so big," one nurse said, waving gently at him. Russell laughed softly. "He's learning faster than I can keep up," Nicole added, "and he's teaching us patience every day." The room filled with light conversation. No pressure, no expectations, just genuine appreciation. Russell felt a sense of belonging he had never experienced during high-profile events. When the ceremony ended, they walked outside into warm afternoon sunlight, the city alive with quiet energy. They stopped on the hospital steps, watching people come and go. Nicole shifted Orville into Russell's arms, smiling as he instinctively adjusted his hold. "You've changed a lot this year," she said. "I had help," he replied, glancing at her. "You gave me space to grow instead of forcing me to prove anything." She shook her head gently. "You chose to grow. That part was always yours." He hesitated, then spoke with careful honesty. "I know I once said I'd never marry you. I don't want to rush into promises just because life turned out differently. I just want to keep building something honest with you." Nicole's eyes softened. Honesty is enough for now. They stood together, comfortable in the uncertainty that once would have terrified him. As they walked toward the car, Orville reached out with tiny hands, giggling at passing shadows. Russell lifted him slightly higher, smiling in a way that felt natural rather than guarded. "I used to believe success meant standing alone at the top," he said quietly. "Now I think success is having someone to walk beside you." Nicole glanced at him. "And someone to carry when they can't walk yet," she added with a playful smile. He laughed softly, realizing how much lighter life felt when shared. The foundation continued growing. The apartment remained filled with laughter, and the future no longer felt like something he needed to design perfectly. It felt like something he could experience, moment by moment. Before leaving the hospital grounds, Russell turned back for one last look at the building. "This place brought me to my knees," he said quietly. "Not because I failed, but because I finally let myself feel." Nicole stepped closer, resting her hand against his arm. "Sometimes falling to your knees is just another way of learning how to stand differently." He smiled, understanding now. Orville reached toward them both, tiny fingers wrapping around theirs as they began walking down the sidewalk together. The city moved around them, cars passing, people talking, life continuing in countless directions, yet their path felt steady and calm. Russell no longer saw love as something unpredictable or threatening. It had become the strongest part of his life, shaping every decision with quiet purpose. And as they disappeared into the rhythm of the afternoon, one truth remained clear. The same hospital door that once filled him with doubt had opened a future he never planned and never wanted to live without. Thank you for spending this time with us. If this story meant something to you, consider subscribing to Mr. Cooper Stories so you never miss the next journey filled with heart, growth, and hope.